Hi everyone, I'm Any New Province, and this week we're going to find out if Portcullis Vine is possibly Pauper Playable. Portcullis Vine is a brand new common from Guilds of Ravnica. It costs 1 green mana for a 0/3 defender that allows you to pay 2, tap, and sacrifice a creature with defender to draw a card. When Portcullis Vine was spoiled, we all jumped to the conclusion that it was going to slot directly into the defender combo shell. Pauper streamer and all-around great community member pproteus went straight to the drawing board, slotting Portcullis Vine into a wall combo list. They took inspiration from fantastic Pauper brewer M. Lovebo, who has had some success with wall combo in the past. Before I break down how Pproteus is using Portcullis Vine, I just want to remind you that you can like the video and subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Alright, let's have a look at Pproteus's Defender Stampede. As I mentioned before, this list is at its core a wall combo list, and the most important piece of wall combo is Axebane Guardian. Axebane Guardian costs 2 and a green for an 0/3 defender that you can tap to add X mana in any combination of colors where X is the number of creatures with defender you control. Almost all of the creatures in our deck have defender, so Axebane Guardian is generally going to be tapping for a ton of mana, but we don't want to just make a lot of mana with it, we want to make infinite mana, which I'll get into later in the deck tech. Next up we have Wall of Roots, which costs 1 and a green for an 0/5 defender that allows you to put a -0/-1 counter on Wall of Roots to add 1 green mana to your mana pool. You can only activate this ability once each turn. Wall of Roots is a fantastic addition to this deck because it essentially comes down onto the battlefield for free if you have an Axebane Guardian or another creature that adds mana equal to the number of defenders you control. Also, it's just a great turn 2 play to continue developing our mana. Our last ramp wall is Overgrown Battlement. It costs 1 and a green for an 0/3 defender, and you can tap it to add green mana to your mana pool equal to the number of creatures with defender you control. While this doesn't fix your mana like Axebane Guardian does, Overgrown Battlement is going to be generating insane amounts of mana for us to do all kinds of ridiculous things in a late game. While we would like to be ramping exclusively with defenders, Pproteus also included the incredibly powerful Utopia Sprawl as a turn 1 ramp play. Utopia Sprawl costs 1 green mana for an enchantment aura that enchants a forest. When it enters the battlefield, you choose a color. Whenever the enchanted forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of the chosen color. This next package is my favorite part of Pproteus's build. It's effectively a toolbox built around spells that cost 3 mana. The card that opens up our library and turns it into a toolbox is this, Drift of Phantasms. It costs 2 and a blue for an 0/5 defender with flying. It's actually pretty good at blocking Delvers if you just have to hardcast it, but we'd rather be transmuting it. Transmute says pay 1 blue, discard Drift of Phantasms, and search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost as this card, which is 3 mana. You reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. You can only transmute as a sorcery. The first card we're going to be tutoring up with Drift of Phantasms is the one that allows us to go infinite with Axebane Guardian. It's Galvanic Alchemist. Galvanic Alchemist costs 2 and a blue for a 1/4 with Soul Bond, which means you may pair this creature with another unpaired creature when either enters the battlefield. They remain paired as long as you control both of them. As long as Galvanic Alchemist is paired with another creature, each of these creatures has 2 and a blue, untap this creature. It does take a little bit of setup to go infinite with Galvanic Alchemist and Axebane Guardian, but there's so many defenders in our deck, it's not unrealistic for us to have 4 when Galvanic Alchemist hits the battlefield. Our next tutor target is Ghostly Flicker and enables another infinite combo in our deck. Ghostly Flicker will ideally be targeting one of our 4 copies of Mnemonic Wall, or if we're really lucky, 2 copies of Mnemonic Wall. Mnemonic Wall costs 4 and a blue for an 0/4 defender, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So once we have infinite mana, we can get infinite enters the battlefield, triggers off another one of our creatures so long as we target Mnemonic Wall and that creature with our Ghostly Flicker. Also, if you have 2 Mnemonic Walls on the battlefield, you can just get back all of the instants and sorcery cards from your graveyard to use again. Our next tutor target is something else to dump our infinite mana into and our win condition. This is Valakut Invoker. It costs 2 and a red for a 2/3. You can pay 8 mana to have Valakut Invoker deal 3 damage to any target. Our next tutor target is the spiciest card in this list. It's Strider Harness. It costs 3 generic mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. You can equip Strider Harness for 1 mana. Harness allows us to use our defenders to generate mana right away. We play them down, equip the Strider Harness, tap them for mana, and cast more defenders. Rinse and repeat until you have a full board and tons of mana. There's also a single copy of Temporal Spring, which costs 1 green-blue for a sorcery and puts target permanent on top of its owner's library. We can use infinite mana and 2 mnemonic walls to use this to lock our opponent out of the game by stacking all of their permanents from the battlefield back on top of their library every turn. This next spell might not win us the game when we're generating infinite mana, but it's still a powerful tutor target. It's Pulse of Marasa. It costs 2 and a green for an instant, returns target creature or land card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life. Pulse of Marasa is going to help us put our combo back together in the face of disruption, but it also allows us to buffer our life total in those hyper-aggressive matchups. Speaking of evasive threats, we have an answer for at least one kind of them in Spider Silk Armor. It costs 2 and a green for an enchantment and gives creatures you control +0/+1 and reach. Wall Combo is a deck that needs a lot of pieces put together all at the same time to go off. Sometimes tutoring for those pieces is going to be too slow, so we've included a ton of card advantage so that we can just draw into them directly. Our first piece of card advantage and another win condition for us is Mulldrifter. It costs 4 and a blue for a 2/2 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw 2 cards. You can also evoke it for 2 and a blue, which means you cast it for 2 and a blue, it enters the battlefield, draws you the 2 cards, but then you have to sacrifice it. We're also running 4 copies of the second half of this deck's namesake. It's Lead the Stampede. It costs 2 and a green for a sorcery and allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your library. You reveal any number of creature cards from among them and put the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Lead the Stampede is an incredibly powerful card that you only have to build around a little bit. I think this is the reason that Galvanic Alchemist is in this deck instead of Freed from the Real, which you'd expect to see out of most wall combo decks. Finally, our last bit of card filtering and our last non-land card is Adventurous Impulse. It costs 1 green mana for a sorcery and allows you to look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Adventurous Impulse was one of the most powerful downshifts we received from Dominaria, and I'm so excited to try it out again here to help us hit our land drops and find our combo pieces. Alright, let's have a look at this mana base. We're only running 14 lands, which is very few, so we're kind of counting on those Overgrown Battlements and Axebane Guardians surviving. Our only non-basic land card is a single copy of Ash Barrens. You can tap it for generic mana if you play it, but you can also pay 1 generic mana to discard it and search your library for a basic land card to put into your hand. For our basics, we have 8 copies of Basic Forest and 5 copies of Basic Island. We have more Basic Forests here because we want to hit Utopia Sprawl on turn 1 or a Ramp Piece on turn 2. Alright, let's have a look at this sideboard. First, we have a couple of copies of Hydroblast for fighting those red decks. We have 2 copies of Scattershot Archer. We can untap this with our Galvanic Alchemist to kill all of the flyers. We have 2 copies of Moment's Feast for those hyper-aggressive matchups. We can flash it back and get extra fogs. We have 1 copy of Fade Away if our opponent is playing a ton of creatures and not a lot of mana. We have 1 copy of Auraflux for blowing up enchantments. We have a copy of Reaping the Graves for getting creatures back in grindy matchups. We have 3 copies of Temporal Spring if we want to get on the land destruction plan. We have 1 copy of Moonglove Extract as a little bit of spot removal. We have a copy of Squall for blowing up all of the creatures, and we have another Pulse of Marasa for gaining a bit more life. And there you have it, Defender Stampede by Proteus. We're going to take this deck into a league at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince this Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Atlantic time. We're there every Tuesday night playing Possibly Pauper Playable decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday night.